difference between what we're going to talk about and what you experience through ChatGPT as a public interface is we're going to talk about generative pre-trained transformers in the context of Generac's unique mission. What we're talking about today is how do we take Generac's mission and extend that through the capability of AI to its customers or improve your operational processes using AI. And this is by teaching it the unique language of your business and what makes you special. And that's not something that the public experience of ChatGPT truly knows. It knows what you put out on the internet. It knows that you make the best transformers, the best energy, but it doesn't know that the unique knowledge that you have internal to the organization, how you interact with your B2B customers, how you sell through those B2B customers, how you change the way that you take their customer service requests, how you look at your operational processes. It doesn't know any of that information. So what we're going to talk about as we get you kind of sort of hyped up about the possibilities of ChatGPT is what are the ways that other companies are starting to harness this in pulling some of these ideas into your ideation sessions. So what you see in front of you are 5 main ideas that we're seeing other companies already using OpenAI in production for. The first, and on the one on the left, is really exciting. This is about customer service request automation. So think about this as the idea of, I have something that's broken. I have something that's broken. What do I typically do? I call someone on the phone. I sit on hold. I maybe get passed around a couple of different individuals. Maybe I called the distributor before I got to somebody. And all the while, I can't do anything else because I'm trying to interact with this ticket, or maybe I sent it into kind of a dumb ticketing system. Companies, what they're doing with customers' request automation is they're using the same kind of capabilities that you're seeing with ChatGPT that David just showed, except they're doing it in the context of an asynchronous relationship with the provider. Say, hey, I'm having a problem with my generator. What do I do about it? Hey, you tried this. Here's a thing that you could do. Here's the detail I'm experiencing. Oh, I'm sorry you're experiencing that. Here's the next thing that you could do to work on fixing it. Even providing you information and escalating to an actual human. This idea of transforming the relationship with the customer, providing them other avenues of interacting with you in a satisfying customer experience. The next scenario is things like order stats. Think about like the Domino's pizza tracker on steroids. Where's my stuff? When am I getting it? When's my generator arriving? Why is it late? When's it getting here? This idea of having a normal conversation with an agent, except that agent actually happens to be ChatGPT, but in the way it's responding to you is gathering information from your unique systems. This idea of also then sales quoting acceleration. We have a customer that's put this into production today across 600 sales reps, where their customers typically get quotes from them via email. So they send in a request for something via email and they say, I need this thing. And then the sales rep looks at that request, turns it into a quote, and then sends that quote back to their customer. And in their industry, because they're in the sort of middleman business, in their industry, time to quote is everything. You get time to quote back and you're the best price, you got the deal. So what they've done is they've turned OpenAI into a model to ingest the emails coming from their customers, turn that into a quote immediately, and have that ready to send back to the customer in seconds. Turn their time to quote from 4 hours basically down to seconds. So this idea of then augmenting the sales reps is a new revenue generator for them. Probably the scenario that has the most examples from accounts right now is data mining. Data mining is where you take something unique about your organization. Think like manuals for a generator. You've got this repair tech that has to work with them. What do they do now? They open up a kind of paper manual or they go to a PDF and they're scrolling through it. They're trying to find what they need. What some companies have done is they've taken their manuals, in this case like a boat manual, and they turn that manual into a digital question and answer platform. I can interact with the manual. It will provide me answers. It will provide me where things are. Like, for example, I have a boat. That boat had a light on. What the heck does this light mean? I wasted 4 hours of my day just trying to figure out what that light meant and what I had to put my boat to not be dead on the water. If I had that interface before, I would have been able to solve that problem really fast. So the data mining scenario is one there's so much value because the data is accessible and a text-driven interface provides a ton of value. And then things like invoice processing automation, or think like any process to generate that's repeatable. Something you do a lot tends to be a great scenario for OpenAI in this context. So much can fit into any of these boxes, or invent your own box. This is really an opportunity, as Tim said, to think big. These are some of the ones that we've already run into. You probably are running into even more as you think about how can I ease the customer experience, the distributor experience, the internal customer experience, or the operations experience of the organization. So examples of this would be like this for a lumber company. I'm a contractor. I need 40 pallets of 2x4s weather treated. I could call up someone, Home Depot, to do that, or I could interact with the chat interface. And I could have that respond and ship it right to my job site. Why does that experience work? It works because it combines two things. And this is what I want you to think about as you do this. You have a request from someone, internal customer, external customer. You have a satisfying customer experience. The satisfying customer experience is why we like the ChatGPT experience. It interacts with us like a human, right? As opposed to a lot of the other bots that we've had for a while. They have like you ask a question, it's got like 5 things you can do. It's actually interacting with me like a human. But then the satisfying part of it is because it can do answer retrieval, gather information from, and this is where it's unique to generate. In ChatGPT, the answer retrieval is specific to what's been trained on since 2000 up to 2021. For something unique to Generac, it's saying any information inside of Generac is fair game. Manuals, business systems, your data lake, anything that exists can be pulled from the business system interface and returned to a customer. Combine that then with even an action taken on that I've returned information and now I'm going to do something like place an order, return information, cancel an order, automate a process, interacting with the business system, and then worst case scenario, pulling that action all the way forward to a customer service rep. This is a process that is why ChatGPT is successful, and it's why the processes we'll talk about today are successful, because we can combine those two things, your unique information and the capabilities of AI. So this is an example. You have a chat experience at the top. We're providing a satisfying experience and a chat-driven experience, and then below that, we're providing things like state of the order. I'm interacting with it through a chat interface, but then I'm providing satisfying experience back to my, in this case, it's a distributor, of the state of an order being delivered back to them. This is for a window company. Another example of this is that we're teaching it unique language for your business. Each of these things means something to a unique business. The top one's a metal company. The middle one is a window company. The one on the bottom is an example that I just literally had. I had to add my daughter to my car insurance. God help me. My first 16-year-old that's driving.
The rates doubled.
I know. It did. It truly did. I was like, holy cow. But just to even find out what it was going to cost to add her, it took me probably 3 hours. I had to call the unique rep, interact with them. They didn't know. Then they didn't get back to me. And I had to call them again. Like, I'm sorry, I didn't get back to you. Asynchronous experience would have answered that question in minutes. Interact with it. Tell me what it costs to add my 16-year-old daughter. I have a heart attack. And then I finally say, oh, I have no other choices. Yeah. They gotcha. But each of these are unique languages. What I challenge you today is, what is the unique language of Generac that makes your experience better for your customers or internal? How do we transform Generac's customer experience? This is an example of that sales rep interface I was talking about earlier. The bottom here is an example of the actual request from the customer, a certain type of metal that's requested. And then injected in the right-hand side of their email experience is the extracted information, and then the AI order that is produced, and then I can accept or modify it and send it back to my customer. You wouldn't believe how much time this saves these 600 reps. Training time alone. Trying to train someone to quote metal across 90,000 SKUs. Oh my gosh, this is crazy. Just giving them an interface like this that lets them get back to their customer. And then the next step is make it totally headless. So some percentage of customers won't always interact with email. Another percentage of customers want to use a chat asynchronous interface, and they are going to attach that associated with this. They can receive orders both ways. They're meeting their customer where they're at, and they're changing the training and delivery experience across their entire rep community, and they're measuring it as they adopt it. Same kind of thing with lights on. This is an example of my boat, except it's from the context of a truck. I have this code that came up in my truck. What do I do about this? Do I go in my paper manual, or I do use an app and ask it? No problem. The truck model, the error code suggests this. Replace it. Okay, cool. That's pretty easy. I can replace a spark plug versus maybe something else that I couldn't replace. the ability for me to ask questions against documentation or against work product that you produced associated with repairs. I have a company right now that does OT machine repair, like manufacturing machine repair. That's all they do as an organization. And they're using this to train on old work product they use to fix machines and manuals. And believe they got these manuals that are like from 1960 sitting on the shelves that we've actually pulled in and indexed. That data combined into a chat interface then integrates into their work management platform. So when they enter in their work notes, it suggests solutions from the manuals or where to go. So able to really bring this data to the customer's fingertips, let them be more effective. So how do you do that? And then we're going to do 2 demos. So how do you do that? Well, the first thing, which you hear everybody on like Twitter and LinkedIn talking about, is prompts. This is really about not injecting a terrible amount of new information into the OpenAI platform. It's about asking the right question. So like if you said, I am a technical person and I want an answer that's suitable for a technical person, it would give you a response that sort of suits your the way you're asking the question. I want this data formatted in a table. I want it formatted as an essay. That's what the prompt essentially does. Answer it this way. You're asking good questions. These other 2 options, as well as some capabilities on cognitive services, are about teaching the model something unique to you. And this is really what we're going to show you in a second. Not so much how to do it, more just to kind of show you that it can be done, is the idea of embedding, which is pulling large amounts of content, PDFs, wikis, tables, things that are like blocks of content we want to be able to respond to. That's something we can bring into a model. Also, there's an ability to essentially teach the model your content, which is the idea of like the model now understands your content the same way it understands everything else on the internet and can respond in a sort of unique way and respond to you in a way that's as authentic feeling as the other ChatGPT interface experiences. So the great thing about this is that even though ChatGPT as an experience doesn't know anything about your internal information, we can use embedding, fine-tuning, and other capabilities to be able to teach it, even if it's in a database or a business system. So let your imagination go to like the farthest reaches of where that information may live, and really get to what can I do to improve the experience of the person I'm trying to help. So I'm going to hand it over to Lewin, and Lewin's going to show you an example of a digital chat interface that's tied to a visualization platform that constructs new window mockups. And then Brian is going to show you a little bit of a walkthrough of how we can teach the platform new information.
Perfect, right? We're going to talk about Windows today a little bit. This is going to be the sample that you saw a little bit earlier in the context, but all based on Windows, right? What I ask Meg is about a little plugin that we wrote. This is actually on my Outlook, live Outlook email. I sent a question to myself, right? That says I have a rough opening of X and Y dimensions for a living room windows. What options do I have? And I'm going to see if I can bring up a ChatGPT like demo coming out from response from there. So in this case, right, we actually got a website. I'm going to minimize this now. You don't need to see that anymore. We actually have a website that is running ChatGPT like bot, Windows Analyzer bot, right? That's running. It actually goes and look behind the data and look for the question that we actually sent. And not only does it give you a most definitive response, right, that most people would like, meaning most efficient economic way to fill that space, but also render the window out for us, right? That's because we also have the graphics for the actual windows. Now, when I looked at this window, it's not appealing to me, right? It's like it looks kind of like a prison, so I'm going to say that, right? With 2 smaller windows on the side. And let me see. Oh, now it actually has contextual questions that comes back to me and say, hey, do you live in a particular area? Because depending on the dimensions, right, there are limitations on what we can do with the windows. It knows that. So we're going to say I am in Miami. Let's see what it comes back with. All right, that's much nicer looking. I find that it's a little more opening for us right now. And at this point, right, I would say something is missing. Like, it's too plain. It's too plain. Can you make it with lines on the window? That is postal look. So, when we say put lines, right, somebody could actually say, hey, I want to go with the colonial look and put a bunch of lines on it. Remember the prison statement that I made earlier? It actually could remember that and say, hey, what does it look like? Oh, that's not bad.
So, little show of hands really quick. How many people are technical here? And how many would you call yourselves more business people? Okay, so I don't think everybody's going to fall asleep too much. So there's going to be a little bit of code involved here, not a tremendous amount. Let's make sure you get to the right workspace. All right, so how do you get started with OpenAI would be the first part. And for most of you, you're not really going to have to worry about this because Generac's taking care of this for you. Like I said, so ChatGPT or Generac's taking care of most of this for you. But if you were trying to get started on your own, there are some requirements for getting started. First off, the Azure OpenAI service is not generally available to everybody. It's not difficult to get it, but you do have to apply for OpenAI access. And the process.
We know people at Microsoft.
We know people at Microsoft that got you for it. So, like I said, this is all taken care of. And then I believe that Dave and his team has probably actually provisioned the OpenAI service and started playing with it. So, but the next step would be to provision OpenAI service. And for those of you that are familiar with working in Azure, it's just like you would provision an app service or like a key vault or something. It's fairly easy. But then now you have to actually do something with it. So you have to integrate your OpenAI service and actually consume some of those resources into whatever kind of Python development tool that you want to use. Today we're going to be using Databricks to kind of walk through an example, but there's a bunch of different ways that you could do it. And this is going to allow us to create our own GPT-powered, custom, type of work. So, like I said, what I've basically done is created a workspace that we're just going to walk through some examples. So I've got some scripts that are already run, and let's start this workspace. So we're waiting for the cluster to start right now, and I guess we'll just ask them raise another question. How many people here know Python? Scared of it? It's a snake, right? It's not terribly hard to learn. I'm not a Python developer by trade, so but you can pick up enough to learn this stuff pretty easily. Models, they're provisioned in the Azure OpenAI service, and we're going to use a couple of different models here today. And the two that I'm going to kind of refer to are Ada, which is a little bit more basic model, and we're also going to be using the Da Vinci model, which is more advanced and can answer harder questions with higher degree of accuracy. So for some of those, they do take a little bit more consumption costs and are a little bit more expensive for you to run. So
It's okay, we know people.
We know people. All right, well, it's going to take a minute or two for the cluster to start. So let's just go over to the not live demo so we can walk through this. But essentially, in this first part, what we're doing is we're kind of importing the OpenAI. We're doing some of the dirty work that you would have to do, like connect to your API keys and get all that stuff set up so you have an environment to run it. And then we're going to, kind of declare these two models that we want to interact with, as we go through this. So, but getting started, I want to do kind of a question and answer, implementation. And I want to make this easy for the demo so that we can kind of concentrate exactly what it's doing. So we created this little function here that just takes a prompt from me and then can transform that into something the OpenAI service can process. So if we ran this, essentially it's going to execute this method and give us a result. So now when we look down here at the answer in question here, and we're going to test this a little bit for accuracy. And so the first question I want to ask it is, what is the largest country by landmass? And when we run this, the result was Russia is the largest country by landmass, and that's an accurate statement. It's huge. We all know that. Let's test it again really quick and ask another question and say, what is the largest country by population? And the result that it gave me was that the largest country in population is China, with some additional factual information. So we know that this is working correctly. We're getting the expected results. So let's ask it something a little bit differently, different type of question. And so we asked it about the Chinese spy balloon, and that's something that pretty much everybody in this room probably has heard about. It's something recent that happened this year. And so I asked it, when was the Chinese spy balloon first spotted over American territory? And the response I got was the first Chinese spy balloon spotted over American territory was in October of 1944. Well, that's not unexpected, because they just had this thing, that showed up. So in the industry, we kind of call this as a hallucination. And that's where you ask a question, you kind of expect the result, and you get something that's just, is not factually correct. And so the reason why, and this is actually fairly easy to understand what happened, is that the public models that are being used today were trained using the entire internet all the way up through June 2021. So it doesn't know anything about what happened, with the Chinese spy balloon. And I think this is a relevant example for the things that you're going to start to think about and ideate today. How do we fix this problem so that ChatGPT can actually answer questions that are relevant today or relevant with the industry knowledge that you have in your company? So, we went out and we did a little bit of Google searching and trying to uncover this, with this data. And when you enter in a search for the spy balloons, you get something back, about the Japanese spy balloons. So now I'm starting to really understand that this really is kind of a date thing. And we can kind of refine this a little bit. And this is really essentially where the article came from, that it gleaned this information is about a Japanese balloon that came up in 1944. So again, not entirely factual, because I was asking about a Chinese spy balloon, and we wound up getting some results that related to a Japanese balloon. But again, not perfect. And so how are we going to refine this result and maybe ask that question to make sure that we get something that's meaningful? So what we did is we have this little function we added a little bit here. We're going to add a prompt here, and we're going to say, answer this question as truthfully as possible. And if you're not sure about the answer, say, sorry, I don't know. So we run this function, we update our function, and now we can answer this question. We're going to ask the question again with a different prompt to answer this question truthfully, right? When was the Chinese spy balloon first spotted over American territory? And just respond, sorry, I don't know. And so, so how this really works is you get a confidence score back from ChatGPT, from 0 to 1, and you can put thresholds in place to sort of say, I don't want answers that are inaccurate. Think of yourself, if you're in the medical industry, and certainly I think this applies to Generac when you start to think about the generators that you provide to, high impact, areas or high impact hospitals and whatnot. So you can actually kind of filter out the less precise answers and ask it to, not act on things that it's not really sure about. So more importantly, like how do we actually incorporate this data, incorporate this data that ChatGPT isn't trained on? Well, it's actually fairly easy. So let's take this example. The first thing that I have to do is I have to collect this information and figure out what I'm going to put into it. And so what we do is we take some documents and we take some questions and we import this into our AI model. And we have this translate and transform this information and index it. Now what we can do is we can take that relevant information that was generated from AI, add that question to it, and run that through DaVinci and get an answer. So that's essentially what we're going to do next. First, I want to find some data that we're going to use for this example. And so what we did is I went out to Wikipedia because it's a reliable source for everybody. And but we did find some information about the Chinese balloon incident, and we extracted this into a text file, and then we can import this into our AI, OpenAI model. We're not going to kind of walk through this, but there's 150 lines of Python that can do this work for us. And since it's not live, I don't have to worry about it. But now let's test it for accuracy when we go through this. So after I'd imported this information, I said, when was the Chinese spy balloon over American territory? And it now answered from January 28th to February 4th, 2023. I next asked it, what is the spy balloon's intended destination? And it said Guam, Hawaii. And so again, if we go back to that article on Wikipedia, we can, this is information that this is what it knew about. We're getting good answers. And then I continued on a little bit. And so when was the first balloon down by the U.S. Air Force? Well, the first balloon was down by the Air Force in February 4th. And we continue on down this path and see how high was the balloon when it was down by the Air Force, and it picked up the correct thing from the article, which is 65,000 feet. So this is an example of how you can take relevant information here. And I think, we talked a little bit about the manuals aspect of it. That seems to be like resonating really well with people. But this is an idea of how you can take this information and import it into your own AI models and leverage this information. And what I also want to kind of point out to you today is that everything that we would have done in a live model, which isn't live, but everything we would have done in this live model is contained within Azure Resource Group, and that information is private. It's not part of the GPT platform. So when you're importing, when you're thinking about ideas, I wouldn't be too hung up about that. That data is not available in the general public models, and you won't have any concerns about privacy or leaking in the data that you might be using. But thanks for your time.